Welcome back to another episode of the Epic Investor Podcast. I'm here with Rich and with James. Today we're going to talk about burnout to breakthrough. And if you're out there feeling like you're stretched a little too thin, or you might even already be burned out, it's just a signal, it's a symptom. And with proper systems, the right team, and a spiritual foundation, this is more of a breakthrough to a better opportunity in life and in your business and investment opportunities. So with that, let's dive in. Today, we really wanted to focus on a topic that I believe most everybody hits at one point in time, whether it's in family, whether it's in business, whether it's in faith or finance, but that's burnout. Burnout is real, and I think it's something that everybody ought to be more aware of, as each of us are stewards over so many different things. We typically set things aside to the point that we end up breaking. So I want to talk about burnout to breakthrough. I'm 41. I still feel young. I don't think I'm young, but I feel young. And so I've got a lot to learn, but I feel like in my young career, I've hit this burnout point several times. And it's funny to me when I think back on those moments of what caused that burnout. I knew it all along. I knew it every step of the way that I'm going to burn out. I'm going to hit my wall. And I knew it because I would typically get sick and I'd be done for like a week. And it was my physical body saying, enough. So I've been in private equity now for about 15 years. As you can imagine, sometimes these moments you walk into a business that you've just acquired and there's a lot of pressure on you, right? There's the entire banknote that's sitting on your back. And you have all of these new people looking at you. They're your employees. They're now your stewardship. And you've got to achieve a level of respect and trust with them. You've got to go in with vendor relationships and achieve the same trust and respect with them. You've got to prove yourself, all while managing, family and faith. And obviously finances are the big one because that seems to be the bigger stress. I got into a business that was a 24/7 operation. I had no protection set up for my time at all. I had given myself completely to...
That's hard.
My intentions were good, right? Like I wanted to earn respect. I wanted the trust. I wanted to prove myself again, but I had not set anything up to protect myself. And so about a year into it, I remember just hitting my absolute breaking point where I was sick. I was putting on weight. Relationships were getting strained all across the board. And I remember feeling this. Everywhere I was, I felt I needed to be somewhere else. If I was at home having dinner with my family, I felt that I needed to be in the office answering a phone call. Or if I was at the office working, I felt like I needed to be, at a driver meeting, or I never felt like I could be where I was. And I remember hitting my breaking point. Have you ever felt that way?
Totally.
Yeah.
Part of me right now, we have obviously full-time jobs. I have a 10-month at home doing an MBA. I just started my MBA program. I'm training for my Ironmans for our Idaho Youth Ranch Initiative. So a lot's going on.
This is kind of a raw subject for the...
Great. I love it.
Exactly. It's maybe the curse of being ambitious on some level. You get overextended sometimes, and you have to find a way to just incorporate structure into your life. But it's like the theory of constraints, right? The more you have going on, you have to find a way to adapt and just make things work. And sometimes overloading can be a good thing, but as we know, it can often be a really bad thing too.
I was thinking of a time when I first felt that burnout. I was a young father, I was still in college. I was working at just on campus, and I'm thinking I could work full time at this wage and not cover my expenses and not even go to school. Like, how in the world am I going to do this? So what do all people do in that situation? Well, I decided to start a business.
Exactly. One more thing.
My undergrad was in exercise science, and I was at the time studying to be a cardiovascular surgeon. That's the direction I was going to go.
Totally aligns with where you're at now.
I know, totally. What was interesting is, so I started a private gym, and I started getting clients because that was the expertise that I was in school for. And one session would be equivalent to 6 to 8 hours. Just on campus. So it changed that perspective a lot. I would have to meet with these high-powered clients. I would leave my apartment, or I wake up at 3:30 in the morning to leave by 4, to get up to where we need to be at 4:30. That was the start time of those sessions. And so I'd do that and then work. And then I'd come home after all the kids were in bed. And I remember one time thinking, I'm doing this for them. And it was this weird twist. And I'm just grateful that I learned this early. But when it all came down to it, I was exhausted. I was trading time for money too. And so I felt like the only way for me to do it is to go out. And so I actually started getting more processes in place, got other trainers involved to help offload some of those, and then merged with 3 fitness centers. So that burnout was eye-opening. It was it's hard to go through.
I appreciate you being raw with us, both of you. Burnout's not always avoidable. And in some cases it's necessary. When you buy a business and you go in, the first 90 days is it's trench work, and there's no way around it but through it, right? And if you're going to be good at what you do, you have to pay the price. But my follow-up question for you was going to be what you did to kind of avoid further burnout or to get away from the burnout. But for me, it's just when you hit that burnout phase, it's a signal that something is wrong and it's out of alignment. It isn't punishment. It isn't a bad thing. I've done this long enough now that I know this well enough that I need to install processes, use my favorite word, processes, systems, right? And I remember sitting at the dinner table, after probably 16 months in this new thing, and my wife asked the question, and my wife's one of the best people on the planet, most supportive, never complains. And instead of getting mad at me for being on my phone, working at the dinner table with my kids, she says, "Who did you invite to dinner with us tonight?" And I thought, okay, got it, right? And I, put the phone away, but that has stuck with me for a long time. And I thought, why is it that I feel like I'm the one, in one of our previous podcasts, right? Why am I doing this alone? Why is it that I feel like I have to wear this by myself? So processes are born, right? Systems come into place. How are we going to measure and protect our time? But I also wanted to make sure that I was not going to ruin somebody else's life at the same time. Just because I didn't want to wear it anymore doesn't mean that I should burn somebody else out, right? But again, it's a signal. It's a signal that there's something that's misaligned. So again, this is where systems are born. Now, Rich, part of this podcast and part of what I wanted to talk about today was specifically EOS. And you've implemented EOS at Epic Capital. And
Yes.
and I'm just curious, how that was born. How did you arrive at EOS? And I know you live it. You do such a good job with it every week at all of our level 10 meetings. But talk to us a little bit about, when people get to these breakthrough or burnout moments and they hit their breakthrough opportunity, not only implementing systems, but why is EOS such a great formula for creating those?
No, I love that. Great question. To give the backdrop to that, I was introduced to EOS through one of our partners, Cedar and Sage Development. And, getting their story, it's interesting because when you have these, executives or these people that are really good at what they do, when you learn about their history, they've been through some really hard times and they went through burnout, the hard times in, the 08 crash, if you were in real estate, having that experience and losing everything and then just spinning wheels and not getting anywhere. That's where he was at. And he had been implementing EOS when we were talking for several years. And his comment to me was, it changed everything for him. It was the inflection point of when they went from just kind of a startup going through that motion to actually scaling and doing some amazing projects. And he attributes all of it to his systems and processes that he put into place. And it was through EOS that made that happen. So that was how I was introduced to it, and just seeing what they were doing over the year. And we're coming up on our third quarterly. Our annual is next time. So our third quarterly is this week with EOS. To put it into perspective, when I first started, 9 months ago with EOS, the company has completely changed. Would you agree?
Yeah,
completely.
it's kind of fun. Didn't you just do some math the other day?
That was probably just the last quarterly math.
Yeah. On our meeting this week, you had just paused for a minute and you pulled out your calculator and you were measuring, what the growth has looked like over the last quarter. And now you're going to get to do that, here in September with the full year. What I'm hearing though from your story or from your experience with Cedar and Sage was that there must have been something, he said it changed everything, but there must have been some kind of testimony or conviction on his end where you were like, I want that.
It was actually his conviction of implementing EOS was the single biggest reason they were able to scale the way they were. And as a partner, he essentially brought me in underneath that umbrella. So we were having level 10s, under that scope. And I have to admit, I think ours is a little structured a little bit better.
That's okay.
Just breaking it down to a simple concept as, you're an entrepreneur, you're doing this by yourself, and you're wanting to get other teams involved, and you're like, well, how am I going to cash flow that, right? Someone says, well, if you don't have an executive assistant, you are one because you're doing everything, right?
Yeah.
And the principles in EOS, they're not necessarily new.
No.
I mean, it's the stuff that's been around for centuries, right? And even on the business side for decades. And it's about how you're pulling them together and applying them in a framework to actually get you to take action and create that structure and communicate that. And once you start thinking through what is your purpose, your true purpose in doing what you're doing, and your vision of how many lives are you trying to impact, and the concept of finding the right people and putting them in the right seats, it lays the groundwork. And it changed what could have turned into a burnout for me. It opened the door to a whole new horizon. And I think this is just the beginning.
Well, and in a real way, it's probably feeding your passion and your purpose, right? By avoiding that breakthrough or the burnout. James, is there a time where you have been part of organizations that didn't have any kind of system or structure, and you can compare it to opportunities that have had that structure or those systems in place, and how it propelled you or strengthened you or
definitely
sustained you?
I would say with Epic right now, it's the first time I've seen a structure like this. So it was so new at first with our level 10 meetings on Monday with the segues and all this structure, but it's so important to achieving your goals. Whereas the other companies I've been with, they're all great leaders, smart people. But I think there's a missing piece of those systems where, there's not anything directly laid out as far as your mission, your rocks, what you want to accomplish that quarter. Even like team cohesions with the segues at the start of the meeting, talking about your personal life and what went well for you this weekend with your wife, your kids, your friends, and then also on the professional side too. So I just think it's hugely impactful to have EOS, and kind of full circle back to the burnout portion. You had mentioned like you get to a point where you're not present and you have so many things going on, something has to change. So if you can apply that same EOS structure to your life, which, you identify these core problems and what do we need to do to fix them, that ultimately leads you to that desired outcome.
Yeah. I remember a time when I was working with a newly hired executive assistant. She actually was one of our employees. She came in to let me know she was leaving, that she had another opportunity. And I was like, you're too talented. Can I create a position for you? I needed an executive assistant. She had a lot of the qualities that a good EA has. And so there was some training involved, but more to the point, we didn't have EOS in the previous companies that I've been a part of, but I would create weekly KPIs, key performing indicators. And it was a simple Google spreadsheet that had 7 or 8 data points that each employee was responsible for reporting, some daily and some weekly. And I remember asking her, what is one of your goals in life? Like, what do you want to achieve? What do you come to work for every day? Because I know you could go find a job anywhere and make money, but I want to make this more meaningful. She wanted to buy a home. Her goal was, she was divorced. She had one child, a teenager, and she just wanted to buy a home. And so we made that a key performing indicator for her, or, we call it a scorecard, right? Did you save money this week or this month towards your down payment, right? And it became this moment where, there was some accountability involved. But additionally, I warned her that there there are burnout moments coming when you've got these goals that you're trying to achieve and all you do is work and grind.
Mm-hmm.
This position for her, obviously, it was a step up from where she was at. So we were able to give her a raise in doing that, which I think is, one of the things that people need to be aware of. Like with your story, I can't pay my bills with this job. So either you go get a second job and create burnout, or you find a way to get paid more, right? And then you got to work on yourself and invest in yourself. And so that was one of the ways, just to shorten the story, it was one of the ways we avoided her burnout was we're going to put you through this course, we're going to get you certified in this, which merits more money, right? It isn't just giving people money because it's not earned, right? Therefore, it's not sustainable. You haven't taught them to fish. You just given them fish. But I believe that by implementing those systems, we protected both of us from a burnout. But additionally, we actually exponentially grew, individually and as a business. So I'm a huge advocate for systems. And again, burnout is just an indicator that there's a lack of systems. There's a lack of processes somewhere. The other side of it that I wanted to focus on is more of a spiritual side. If God created the world in 7 days or 6 days and then rested on the seventh day, shouldn't we also have a moment where we are resting or we are away from work or we've been able to unplug and detach from these obligations that take so much from us? That was also one of our other KPIs for our employees was, where was your, we do clarity breaks, right? Mm-hmm. Where was your breakaway for whatever it is, whether it's hunting or fishing or playing ball or hiking or Ironman races? Like it was our stewardship to make sure that we were not sending our people down a burnout path. Franklin Covey talks about sharpening the blade. Yeah. Have you heard that reference?
Woodcutter, and there's two of them that are racing, and one just sharpened everything.
Pretty sure it was an axe.
Or it was an axe, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but they're chopping down a tree.
Yep.
And if I remember right, the story goes that the gentleman that sat down to sharpen his blade was actually ridiculed and criticized for losing time. Right? He's beating you. He's got 50 more hacks at that tree, and the guy's just sharpening his blade, right? There's power in that, right? You need systems, you need KPIs. You also need to allow yourself a break. You need to allow yourself the opportunity to shut it down and reset. And
that's harder than it sounds.
I was just going to say that.
It's harder than it sounds. I just need a break. But
how do you do it?
Well, like like when you said, no matter where you were thinking you should be somewhere else.
Oh yeah.
I was like that, where if I was taking a break, I felt like I'm doing something wrong.
I feel guilty.
Yeah, like I've got to be doing something, and so then it would be an automatic. Well, I've got to get up and go do something else, and then I would never get the clarity on which direction I needed to go. So.
Mm-hmm.
If I can ask you guys a personal question, and maybe it's not too personal, but in your clarity breaks, do you find that it takes you a minute to like 5 minutes or 6 minutes where you finally like stopped your mind from all of the extra
or 30
flooding or 30?
It's kind of like when you go on vacation and the first 2 days you're still in your office, right?
Yeah.
It takes a second to kind of settle in. And yeah, for me, I think the culture we have maybe in the USA is part of it too. The hustle culture, the grind mentality, the constantly working. I can see the benefits of those things, but obviously it does lead to breakthrough, and it can really severely impact your family, your relationships. All the things that really ultimately matter when it comes to that freedom of purpose in life can be really negatively impacted by it. So I think structure is important. I wanted to share, think about when you're a kid, you grow up, you go to school, you go to high school and college, there's always some kind of structure. I'm taking this class, this is my course list, and all of a sudden you're spit out into the real world. And unless you maintain that structure on your own, like actively, or the company you work for has a system in place to do that, you're potentially likely to lose that structure and that system unless you have the discipline to keep it on your own. And so it is so important to keep that in mind on your day-to-day life, but also with your clarity breaks, like making sure you keep it sacred and you stick to it and you detach emotionally and like ask those real questions, like what really matters and where do I want to be in 3, 4, 5, 10 years.
Backing up a little bit, just for those that are thinking clarity break or a break on their what is a clarity break?
In the last gig that I was in, we were a 24/7 transportation provider. So how do you find a way to unplug when you are
call.
We called it 25/8, 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. It never stops, right? And when we talk about unplugging or a clarity break or, sharpening the blade, I had to learn how to be intentional with my time, meaning I would send a message to my team, and at that point, after 18 months of grind, right? We finally had an EA, we finally had an operations manager, we finally had some senior people that we could lean on. I would send a message to my top 3 people and say, I'm going to be unavailable tomorrow. My phone's going to be off. Because I'm sorry, if my phone's on and it rings, I'm answering it, especially if it's from work because, well, they're calling me. They need something. This is my stewardship, right? My family depends on it. My investors depend on it. Mm-hmm. But if you had the right team in place, then I could say my phone's going to be off for the next 20 hours or whatever the case is. Or my clarity break or my 1 hour session is I actually go somewhere where the phone doesn't work. I did it on the airplane yesterday, right? Your phone doesn't work. I didn't connect to Wi-Fi. I had 3 hours of true uninterrupted time to just, let my thoughts go where they wanted to. So that's how I would do it, Rich.
I don't know if I have a true definition of a clarity break. And not all of my clarity breaks are equal.
Sure.
Some, it's just, I go out for a run and I put a book on that I'm interested in that topic. And then I just listen. And then running is really a great place for me just to let my thoughts work through. And I get some of my best ideas when I'm in that flow or in mode. I like being out. I've got to get, if I'm the same way, if I'm in my office or in my home office and something comes up, I immediately want to just take care of it. For me to get a true clarity break, I need to leave. I need to go somewhere. And I love going up. I love the mountains. We have foothills in the Boise Valley. It doesn't take very long. You can get up there and you can see the entire valley below. And then I bring a notepad and then I just go through questions such as, what do I need to do more of? What do I need to stop doing? By names, I'll have your names down and I'll say, okay, James, what can I do to better support James? Or what kind of conversations do we need to have? Or even clients or whatever seems to be important to go through at the time. And I like putting myself where I can see a different perspective. And I like being up high where I can see the valley below, because that relates to, instead of focusing on the ruts or in the bit, I want to work on the business or on the vision, or
it's like a 30,000 foot view.
Yeah. If you're going to make an impact, you've got to be able to understand or think through, how you're going to do that and not just one way or another. But that's how I do it.
I like it.
That's important. I think this world is just full of distractions, especially this day and age with phones and everything. It's so easy to get up and go to work and then come home from work and just like you have your obligations or your kids or whatever, and you don't ever take time to really be intentional about like sitting by yourself, think about life, think about where you're at, ask yourself the important questions. Like most people will go months at a time maybe without sitting back and just really meditating on it and thinking like, what needs to change or where am I at? Where do I want to be going? So I think it's important just to highlight that structure again, getting out of just the hustle and bustle and that constant flow of work and obligations and I have to do this and I have to do that, and sitting back and going to the mountains, or for me it's the Boise Greenbelt, and watching the water and just kind of taking a half hour to an hour to just really think deeply about life. And that provides clarity moving forward for the next week, and oftentimes kind of garners change that's usually positive.
Well, I was going to bring that up. Like, how do you know it's working, right? How do you know that they are effective? And sure, you can feel good about them, right? You feel better. You've got your notepads and you've got your journals. But I'm such a data-driven guy. I used to have a sales guy that would come in the office. Jason, I slayed it today. I just murdered it. I'm like, yeah, how many did you close? I had a lot of really good conversations. And I'm like, well, that's great, right? But did we slay it? Like, let's look at the numbers, right? What do the numbers show? And so for me, it's like this data-driven assessment of are my breakaway moments or my clarity breaks, are they yielding a result? And I think that's given in the data, right? Again, Rich, earlier this week you mentioned that You identified the growth that's occurred in the last week. That's not completely attributed to clarity breaks or to, moments of meditation, which I know you're part of the 5 a.m. club, which seems like in the morning, that's a great time for that meditating. But I still believe though that is part of the equation of the success when you've had your moment to work on the business, not in it.
Bring the spiritual side back in. We've talked about in the past, the concept of you don't have to do things alone. It's on the spiritual side, bringing God into the equation and having a relationship with my Savior to cover us from, the shortcomings and, navigating through it just adds, for me, what a difference it makes when you have a partner in life that cares more about you than you can imagine and cares more about how you're going to be able to affect lives. So in those clarity breaks, to me, it's kind of bringing your whole life into one. And when that happens, it gives purpose to the work you do at work, the work you do at home, and the work you do with the relationships you're building.
Thanks for sharing that. That's personal, but I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's important. And it leads into the final point that I wanted to talk about, and that was the team. And that can be, godly centered purpose. That can be the people around your circle, or in your circle around the table. You mentioned, Rich, 9 months ago and you used the word team, has changed dramatically in the last 9 months. And it's because of the pieces you're putting together that is helping you avoid burnout and focus more on what you're called to do, right? Your freedom of purpose. Burnout is real at so many levels. They've got to consider, the opportunities to go sharpen their blade. They've got to consider what their purpose is. What are they really working towards? What do they really want? And they got to look at the team that's around them. That can be your family. It can be the people at work. It can be, the community members, whether that's church or I've got a friend of mine who was going through a really hard time with his marriage. And, he reached out and I said, thank you for trusting me, to reach out. And it's not about me, but it felt good that he at least had somebody he could turn to, right, when he needed help. Because I've done it 100 times, right? Who do you go to when you're on the ropes? Specifically to my experiences recently with burnout, if I didn't have the team in place, I would have remained in that burnout phase and not really been able to help in the business or help people or help my family, and stop inviting unwanted guests to family dinner. That team is probably the final component to avoiding burnout.
Definitely.
Well, the book, Who Not How,
yeah, I
think is an excellent read on preventing burnout, because burnout comes when you're trying to do everything
yourself
and you don't know how to do it, and then you get that pit in your stomach, like how I have no idea or clue what needs to happen, but I'm the only one that can go figure it out. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story about your friend. Just recently, this last week, I had a friend of mine reach out, and just learning her story. Not only is she having health issues with bronchitis, had a surgery that she needed, was delayed, going through a divorce, just horrible things in her life. And her comment to me was, at least I have God on my side. It was almost emotional just listening to her share that she knows that he'll not give her anything that she can't do, but she didn't really have anyone else to turn to, so she's turned to him. And I think it can go both ways. You can turn away, and I thought, how strong you have to be to go through that and look towards that light. But,
yeah, which we tend not to do, right? We tend to try to shoulder it ourselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, back to our first episode, it just comes down to having the right teams around you. You have to be able to lean on someone or something. It could be your family, it could be God, it could be friends, it could be your sports, your quarterback. Who knows what the example is? But overall, it's, you have to avoid that tendency to want to take it on your own and like utilize your resources, utilize your team. That's what they're there for. And sometimes it's an ego thing, right? Because you want to do it on your own, you want to take it on. But overall, when you lean on people and utilize their skills, the outcome is always, usually at least a lot better.
Yeah. We really just want everyone to know out there that burnout's real and it's nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, I think it's part of the equation to success is when you're building or creating something, sometimes you are bootstrapping it. And that means that you are grinding, and kudos to you for being out there and doing that. But when you hit that burnout moment, it simply is just an indicator that something is misaligned. And if you can introduce systems, whether that's the EOS model or some simple spreadsheet using KPIs, and if you'll introduce opportunities for a break, to unplug and detach and rise above, get up into the foothills and get out of the fog of war. If you're spiritually driven and you've got moments there where you can find God and put him in the center of your work, and then lean into the teams around you. Typically, this is a formula for success of getting from that moment of burnout, and really creates the breakthrough into something that you will find grows and scales exponentially. And you're more than likely going to find your purpose is more individual than it is transactional at that point.
You said it fantastic. What a great way to bring it all together.
Well,
Agreed.
I'll remember that next time I hit my burnout.
Anything for the audience. If any of you have stories of burnout, share them with us. I want to know how you're handling it and how you're getting through it, and what things have you used? What are the processes that you're putting in place to make it work? What hasn't worked? But just know that if you're in burnout and you're at that lowest of lows, you're not alone. Reach out. Let's talk through it. There's a way through.
Yeah, I'd love to be a sounding board for the burnouts that are going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of service that can be given.
Absolutely.
Because there's always a breakthrough.
It's coming.
Yep.
It's coming.
Keep pushing.